Hey everybody, how you doing? So this section is, I'm doing a short, quick section on custom decals. So here's the thing. Basically the truck comes with its own decals and I wanted to add my own, and of course to customize my stuff. I didn't cover this when I did the car. So this is kind of, for any custom decals that you end up doing or whatever. One of the first things you're going to need to do is, when you decide you want to do custom decals, is you need to look at paper. So hang on one second, let me grab some paper. Okay, a few years ago, there was actually a decent company that produced actual decal slide paper. It was really good. It was better than the stuff that's out there right now. And unfortunately, I can't find it anymore. So I've kind of been testing local stuff. So this is something you can get off of like around Amazon, or I actually get this off of Hobby Lobby. So water transfer decal paper. I can tell you this. So, and again, these are clear transparent sheets. There's two different kinds. Basically, you're going to have clear and you're going to have white. So obviously one prints on clear, the other one prints on white. So the biggest thing that you're going to have to make sure when you're buying paper for is, are you using an inkjet printer or a laser printer? So the main difference between the two is that inkjet is literally ink is sprayed onto the paper. That has to be sealed, okay? If it's not sealed, when you put it in water or you add any kind of liquid to it, it's going to smear it and run the ink, because it's an ink that has to be shot onto the paper and then it has to dry. You have to seal that, okay? That's one of the biggest things between using an inkjet and a laser printer. The laser printer uses heat to set the ink, so it usually doesn't have to be sprayed. I don't remember it having to be sprayed or clear coated. And I'll be honest, it's like, if I remember right, you don't have to, but don't quote me 100% on that. It's been a while. I actually bought an inkjet printer just to do my own decals. The thing to remember with the paper, right? So this is clear backed inkjet, and this is a water slide decal. I'm sorry, white, that you can buy off of Amazon. This is Koala, whatever the brand is. It's a no-need spray, inkjet, and laser. You can use it on either one. So this doesn't do too bad. It's not horrible. However, it's very, very fragile. Once you get it onto a surface, if you don't put a coating over top, like a clear coat or something, even after it's dried, you can damage it or rub it off or chip it. So you have to be very careful with it. The clear stuff, water slide decal, inkjet, again, I found no need spray. For whatever they do, somehow it locks in so you don't have to spray it. I found that to be accurate, okay? The thing to remember with printers is that there is the standard printer that you get and use at home does not have white ink. So when you print on clear, you're printing a color onto a clear surface, which makes it translucent. It means that light can go through, okay? So if I were to print this on clear and then put it on, you're barely going to be able to see it on this paint. So what you would have to do is create like a white background piece, print it on white, then put it on, then put this clear one over top. Or in a case like this, since it's just a simple cutout, I just did it on the white backed paper, okay? Your stuff that you get inside your model kit is print on a commercial made printer, which has the ability to use white ink. So they're actually putting that white ink or that white base first, which in essence cuts off the light from coming through. So then it puts the ink on top of it, and this is a guess. It's kind of like a sublimation process, I believe. And that's why those decals are able to be seen as well as they are, okay? So another thing with using water slide or the clear is that on a lot of the clears you have to print them backwards, okay? Notice how everything is backwards? That's because when you think about it, the clear is down here, and what you're doing is you're actually flipping it over. and then you're sliding it off, and then the clear goes down on the surface, okay? So what that means is that your next thing you have to figure out is whatever printer you're using, okay? And I actually like, these are not bad. They're not the greatest in the world. They're not like the old school traditional decal paper, but they're actually not that bad, especially if you clear coat them, okay? And I got those off of Amazon. They're not too expensive. The thing you need to remember is which one you pay attention to, inkjet or laser, or in that case, it's both. And is it clear backed or is it color, white backed, okay? Now, if you're doing a really light color surface, like a yellow, a light green, a super, super light blue, almost like a sky blue, or a white background, you can print on a clear, and because that's a white background, it's actually going to show up really well. The darker your background, the less you're actually going to see your decal if you're using clear paper, okay? Now, the next thing you got to figure out on your printer is how does it print, okay? Now, you're thinking like, what do you mean, how does it print? Some inkjet printers and some laser jet printers, depending on your printer, when you put the paper in, like let's say this is in the tray, on a lot of your big giant laser printers, when it pulls it, it actually rotates it. And then it prints on the surface and kicks it out, okay? So you may put your paper, you may, depending on how your design goes, determines which way it's going to print out on your printer. You just need to make sure you know which way. So I always do a test page. I just grab a piece of paper, write 1 on one side, 2 on the other, and I just go ahead and put like, I'm putting it in nose in, top, bottom, and then boom, I feed it into my printer like this. I then do a test print, and when it prints out, mine comes out this way. So it comes out top to bottom from however you want to do it, front to back, whatever, top to bottom, on the page actually facing up, okay? So mine goes like this. So I do my designs, and what I did is I actually took a shape of the car, a basic shape of it, and then I put it in Photoshop. I've been using Photoshop for almost, I don't know, 15 years, something like that. So I kind of know a lot of the workings on it. So I just took a design in there, and then I played around with colors, and then I sat there and came up with designs and ideas and thought how to do it. So, and then once I got that figured out, the key at that point is I had to save each individual piece into its own file. Like that's a JPEG, that's a JPEG, the whiplash is a JPEG, my name, that, the symbol there, those are each a single JPEG. Then what I'm doing is I'm taking it into a Word document, and I'm sorting it on that Word document, in essence like this. So this is just a regular piece of paper. And so option 1 in Photoshop, I took and put everything in what I thought it was going to be the size, and then I made it a block. And I took that block and then put it into the Word document, and then just made 3 different sizes. Now, you can do that, or you can literally just pull in individual JPEGs and then resize them inside the Word doc, and then place them on the sheet of paper where you want. So the thing I have to remember is that mine prints out like this. So it doesn't matter either way on that page because it prints off the front of the page, okay? Now you're thinking, well, how do I know what size I need? How do I know what's going to fit? Because you got to think about it. Well, in Word, you can actually take your individual piece, right? The individual one, let me zoom in a little bit. You can actually take each of these individual symbols, like logos, pictures, whatever, and you can resize it in the Word program. Now, I'm not going to tell you how to do it in Word. I'd have to show you, and depending on which version of Word you have is where the tab is, but generally there's like a picture review or image review, image adjust, something like that. And then if you look up here in your right-hand corner of your screen, up there, there's usually a place where you can actually type in the number, and you're talking inches, okay? It's in inches. Now overseas it may be metric, and I don't know millimeters and all that, so, but it could be either way. So what I did is you have option A is you can use literally a ruler. So like to figure out how big this space was, right? I just measured it in real life. So inch-wise, so it basically comes out to just under 3 3/4 inches. So I know 3 1/2 inches is going to give me a margin on each side of about a 1/4 of an inch, which means it'll fit with no issues. And then I realized that, okay, well, I can't, if I do 3 1/2 by 3 1/2, I have to make sure and print the size on that. Otherwise, it's going to stretch it out, okay? So I realized that I wanted my banner up top to be about, so an inch is pretty big, so about 1/2 an inch would be kind of real world looking. So in in Word, when I actually put it on there, which this is the actual printout on the paper, okay? You can see where I did it. I did it in two. I did it in white and I did it in color just to see which one I like more. When I cut it out, it's 3 1/2 by a 1/2 inch, if I remember right. 3 1/2 by a 1/2 inch. Let me look at it. Yeah, that's a 1/2 inch. Okay, that actually looks really good. That looks really good on where that's going to go on, because that's where I wanted it to go. Sorry about the glare. So that's going to go on about there. Okay. And then I can do other designs on there if I want. I sat there and I basically figured out my real world size, and then I took it into Photoshop. Or actually this design in Photoshop is huge. It's like this big. And then I shrunk it down in Word to where it's actual size. So remember, the average sheet of paper in the United States is 8 1/2 inches by 11 inches, 8 1/2 inches wide by 11 inches long. And you can reset your margins and all that kind of stuff if you need to help you do it. But anyway, that's how I figured it out, that this needs to be about 1/2 an inch in depth, and then, or up top to bottom, and then I wanted it 3 1/2 inches, and that came out pretty good. Okay. So then I'm looking at the license plate, right? So my license plate's going to go there on the back, and this is the license plate holder that comes with the kit. And that's going to go in there. So then I took and I measured how big is it, and it comes out to just about 1/4 of an inch, just a hair under 1/4 of an inch. So 1/4 is 0.25. When you break it down to decimal points, 1/4 of an inch is 0.25, 1/2 an inch is 0.5, 3/4 of an inch is 0.75, 1 inch is 1.00 inch, right? So I know that is just under 1/4 of an inch. We're talking 1/16 under 1/4. So if 0.25, so I think I put it down to 0.20. So 0.20 inches for the top to bottom. When you resize it inside of Word, it automatically adjusts the other dimension. So pick whichever dimension is most important. In this case, I wanted top to bottom, so I did that. Or you could even go with how long it is, okay? And then I literally printed out my plate. This is my custom plate. I took a custom plate from 1966, and it fits perfectly in the spot. There you go. So beyond that, that's all there really is to it. Now here's the funny thing about doing the license plate, right? I don't have to do wet the whole thing and then print it out on water slide decal paper and then wet it and then slide it onto this piece. I can just use clear glue, white glue, canopy glue, any other clear glue, and put that on there and then just glue it to it, because I don't need it to be actual water slide. So that's how I'm going to do the license plate. And then on the sides, I took some other basic design ideas, and actually with the sleeper cab being on the frame like that, it's going to block most of this back piece. So the only thing I'm going to put on there is going to be this top whiplash deal, okay? I made this in Photoshop. I took all this stuff together, put the font and everything, and then made a custom size shape to it and everything, so it looked good. This is my quote-unquote sponsor, one of my sponsors of my team, okay? I decided that's going to look pretty good there. or I could even put it right in the middle, whichever I want. And then I was thinking about taking like the big Ford, well, it's already got the Ford logo, but like the Holly, the Lions Dragway, the NHRA, or I could even use any of these over here, the Dragmaster, the Hearst symbols, whatever. Now remember, when you're cutting out of white, this is printed on white background, if you leave a border in white, it's going to show up white. Okay? So like, there's no way I can cut out Comet Cyclone. This is too small. I mean, I'm not that good. Now I could cut it out around it like a rectangle shape and have the white background and do that if I wanted to. Now if I printed this out on white and then put it on a white car, you're still going to see a little bit of an edge, so you're going to want to have that reduced as much as possible, okay? Just like if you're printing on clear, where was my clear? Yeah, these are clear. This is this water slide decal paper. And by the way, guys, this water transfer decal paper is the same. It's almost identical to this stuff. I discovered it's almost identical to the clear stuff off of Amazon. It's just another brand, another version of the way that it's done. Okay, so in my opinion, you don't need to worry about buying this specific piece of paper at this size from Hobby Lobby, and it's kind of expensive. You get the whole 8.5 by 11. You can do a lot more. So it's up to you. You can trust this clear, but this is only clear. I think it has white, but ours only sold clear, and it only works with inkjet. Or you can just go with the other paper. But like this is on that clear background. So remember, if I cut this out, I have to cut it all along that edge. I've been able to cut the 427 out, like these square hollies I can cut out. The Hearst actually had a white border around it, okay? The Golf did not usually in the stickers. The Jardine headers did not. The Mercury logo, I have to literally cut it out, and I can, and I have been able to do that, but it's really small. So you just have to use either, your X-Acto blades. You can also use like small scissors, things like that. I actually do really well with regular scissors. So as far as your custom decals, it's just a matter of, there are free programs like GIMP, and I can't remember the other one, that are out there that you can design your own decals if you want to. Just remember, the biggest things are, if you use clear, you're going to want to put them on a light color vehicle, okay, like a white car. If you're using the white background paper, you have to cut it to the exact dimension of that border, or you're going to have a white background or white border, okay? And remember, on some of the clears, you have to print them mirrored, a mirror image, which means it's mirrored onto the print, because it's actually going to go on like this. Now it depends on the paper. You have to read the back of your paper. The instructions are going to tell you what settings to do. Like, here's your instructions, right? So big thing is, like, don't spray clear coating over this one. It tells you what it's good for. This is only good for compatible with inkjet printers, because this is inkjet only. Okay. So in here it says print your design on the glossy side. Make sure to print with mirror image setting. Now remember, this is clear paper, okay? And it tells you your recommended inkjet settings, right? Paper type, print quality, paper type, glossy photo paper, premium glossy paper, sticker paper, whichever comes closest to your setting in your printer, okay? Print quality, standard. I've tried it on both high and standard. Standard works just fine. To put it in perspective, when I printed these out, I did basic photo paper, or semi-gloss photo paper, because it is semi-gloss, and I printed out in standard quality, and there you go. On some of them, when you print them out, depending on your printer, when you're using this really glossy clear paper, you might get a mark, an ink mark, or a run like that. Yeah, that one's ruined, because that's the way when it printed out, when it was printing and it slid across, and it smeared the ink, okay? That's one of the issues with using an inkjet printer, is there's a chance that you're going to smear the ink when it prints out, okay? And then after that, put it into a Word document program, because remember, you can't print directly from Photoshop or GIMP. What those are, those create JPEGs, so they create an image. You can do a PNG, whatever. And then you're going to have to put it into a program that prints. I just put it into Word, analyze everything on Word where I want it. I resize it according to the dimensions inside of using the Word up here in the corner up here in the bar. There's a whole bunch that go across. And usually when you look up here, it'll have like a little box with like 1.0 inch and like 0.75 inch or whatever width depth. You're going to have to adjust that. Now remember, if you're going to use this paper that's smaller, you have to change the print size in Word. Okay, this is, I think it's, well, let's just figure it out. This is actually 6 by 9.5 is the size of this paper. You have to make sure and change the print size on your Word program so you know you're going to fit on this page, okay? If you don't, and you put this into your printer to print in the middle or the left or the right, and you've just thrown it on the page like this, well, guess what? That's how it's going to print out, right? So just remember that, okay? All right. So let me change a couple of things, and then I'm going to show you how to put on a couple of these slides, the water slide decals. I'm going to put the one on the front here or on the side real fast, okay, just so you can see it. Which one was I using? Is that the same? No, that's not the same size. Okay. When I did this print, I realized I only printed that in one size, which means I had to print out a whole nother paper just so I can get that second one, because I'm going to put it on the other side. Okay, and I'll show you a way you can print this out or cut this out and everything. Okay, so hang on. Okay, so we're back to continue a little bit. Okay, now on this sheet here, I just need this emblem right here. Okay, now I could go ahead and cut out this entire section so I can cut these out individually later, or I could just cut out this piece right here. So, but I also want these hollies and the hearse symbols here and all that, which I already have them on this bottom section, but notice they're a lot bigger. Okay, well, they're one size up, so I don't want to use those. And I think those hollies are bigger too. Yep, okay, so I'm going to want to use those. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this section out here, but just to show you, you could do it. Like on a regular decal sheet, if you want to cut regular decals out, you can just cut out the one piece you need instead of the whole sheet, okay? So just take your time. Yep, I need this one. So at this point, I'm not trying to cut the edge out from here because it's going to be too difficult to try to do it on the paper. But anyway, there it is. And then I'm not too worried if it's perfect, but I didn't quite cut it all the way through. Now that you can tell there's two different sides of the paper. Oh boy. Yep, I should have made sure, because that may have damaged the back of it. Yep, it just took part of the paper off. Wow, okay. So make sure you cut all the way through. We're going to see how that works, because I don't know how that's going to work. So before I cut anything else out, I'm going to see if this is going to work. But I need to cut it. I need to cut it to size. And if you're going to do it this way, just make sure you can cut really well with scissors. Because you got to remember, this water slide decal paper is they're putting the material onto a surface. And if the back of that surface is compromised, there may not be enough opaqueness there, which means that light doesn't go through. And let's just say, let's say you're not super 100% perfect on that cut. I'll show you a trick you can use, because I don't want to have that white sticking out. Because on a dark blue background, white will stick out like a sore thumb, and it will look like a badly cut out decal that you put over. There's that tiny little piece right there. Trip that. Okay. Now I want to make sure that edge is dark, so I'm going to use my Sharpie, and I'm going to put it along that edge and darken the edge. That way there's no white. I'm literally just going on that edge. This paper is about a ½ millimeter thick, so there's a little bit of an edge there. Well, we're going to see if this works. So I'm doing this all live, guys. Live, not Memorex. Some of you may remember those commercials, but yeah. So I'm going to put that there. I know I want to get it centrally located. I already have my water. Okay. It was warm. It's already cold. Oh well. I'm going to go ahead and get my Q-tips ready. Oops, too far. Let's back out a little bit so we can see. And actually, I'm going to move this stuff out of here so I don't accidentally wet it and ruin them. Okay. And I'm actually keeping this down to protect the painted surfaces. Now, I've already buffed and polished the surfaces in. There I go. Welcome to live. Things don't always go perfect, and I've got to clean that out. There's wax in there. Okay, there we go. You don't need a ton of time in there. Now, it's recommended to put a drop of Dawn dishwashing liquid or some kind of Dawn, doesn't have to be Dawn, dish soap or something inside your water because you want to slick it up. So go ahead. If your paint is water activated, then you're going to want to protect it before you try to do a decal, okay? But you want to wet your surface so it makes it slick. Okay, you want to be able to have it slide around. Now, water's beating up because the surface is protected. Okay, now I'm going to put my decal in the water. I usually swish it around for a few seconds. The warmer your water is, but you don't want it hot, it'll actually help it come off the paper faster. I recommend about 15 seconds or so. And then what I'm going to do is give it about 15, 20 seconds. Okay. Now, I'm going to start gently. We're talking super, super gently, trying to see if it moves off the backing. Okay. Yep, there it goes. I can see it. There it goes. It's already moving. Okay. Now, once you get that, there we go. It moved. Okay. Once you see it move, get one part of it locked down roughly where you want it, and then you're going to slide that backing out from behind it. Okay, we're good. This stuff is super finicky. Make sure that is straight. There we go. So that damage to that back of that paper didn't hurt it. And you can actually feel the slick glue surface. And then throw that away. And you want to make sure it lays down nice and flat. But see, it still moves. You've got to be very gentle. Be careful on how you move it. Okay. Make sure it is dead set, guys, or it's going to be maybe a little. Yeah, there we go. Now, one thing you can do is you can use a paper towel or a cloth like that, an absorbent cloth or something, And if you're going to press on it, you need to soak up all that extra water, right? If you notice, if you just put the paper towel on the edge, it will literally wick the paper, the excess water away. Okay? But see, it moved? It will move for a bit until it sets. You've got to be super gentle. If you're going to do that, you barely touch it, okay? Hold it down, suck the paper. What you're trying to do is get the excess water out, and boom. I roll the Q-tip, barely touching it. All you're trying to do is make sure that there is no air bubbles or any raised surfaces or anything like that. And if you want, you can use, so microset is what you would put on the surface if you want to make it slick. If you're using these, microsol is the solvent, okay? And I even had to write on top of the decal. This helps suck it down to the surface. But this is a flat surface, so it's not going to need that. Now, later what I will end up doing, because this has to dry, and I'm not going to touch it again because there's a risk of it moving. Once it starts to grip, if you move any part of it, it may stretch, it may rip, it may tear, do whatever. These things are super, super fragile. Okay, but that's all it took. And then just double check. Yeah, I've got no bubbles, I've got nothing, so I'm going to let that completely dry. Okay? That's all it takes to put decals on, guys. And that's how it takes it. That was, as you saw, I just did a custom decal and put it on my rig. This is going to be the one that carries the car. All right, guys. That's the basics of doing custom decals on your models. So hopefully that'll help you. On to the next section. Okay, so the thing I forgot to mention is that I am going to put a clear coat over top of these once I get them on there. Once they're all on, I'll do actually I think I'm going to do a semi-matte clear coat or a gloss clear coat that will go over top of it in order to make sure and seal it to the body. Anyway, so I'm going to go ahead and put this other decal on real fast.